You're listening to Working in Oncology, a podcast and video show that spotlights oncology practice staff and industry influencers who work behind the scenes to shape the future of oncology. The more knowledge the oncology community shares with each other, the more we all grow. Let's get into the show.
Welcome to Working in Oncology. I'm your host for the day, Alicia Evans. I'm joined by Richard Stein, former senior manager and of inside sales at Amgen.
Hey, Alicia. Hey, everybody.
Hey, Richard. Welcome to the show. I've been really looking forward to our conversation today. You have 20 plus years of oncology sales, sales management, and sales training experience. And I know our listeners are going to find so much value in what you are going to share today.
I hope so.
So before we jump into the conversation, can you tell our listeners and viewers a little bit about you, your background, and what you do?
Sure. So I have been in, as you said, I've been in oncology sales, and I've been an oncology manager and national sales trainer and oncology trainer for over 25 years. And started out selling adriamycin, believe it or not. I'm aging myself a little bit. So branded adriamycin and specialized in a lot of solid tumors through the years. So breast cancer, colorectal cancer, prostate, lung, glioblastoma, ovarian, head and neck, really the gambit of solid tumors and a little bit of liquid tumors as well. So it's been a wonderful a career, and it's been really great being able to help patients find therapies that work for them, and so just happy to be here and help out.
And we're glad to have you here, Richard. Can you tell me a little bit more of why you went into oncology?
Well, I mean, it was kind of very serendipitous. I started off with a very, very small company called Kabi Pharmacia. And one thing led to another, and Kabi Pharmacia purchased Adria Labs, which had the oncology side, and just stayed in oncology and had a lot of success with it. So my mother is a breast cancer survivor. She's been 30 plus years out, and so for me this is kind of personal. It's I love being able to help people who've had loved ones who've been affected by cancer, and talking to their physicians and providing information and the science to help the physician make a great treatment therapy that is best for them, so that they can, although you can't say it in a clinical discussion, to help them live longer, have a good quality of life, et cetera.
All about back to the patient advocacy.
Absolutely.
Everything best for the patient.
Everything has to be about the patient.
Awesome. So you have a long record in the sales industry. And as an office staff, sometimes you're overwhelmed by the different people who come in the office.
Sure.
Who are they? What do they do? Why are they all sending me emails? Why are they all sending me pamphlets?
Absolutely. So go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah. Can you help us kind of parse out, like, who is who? Who are all these people coming to visit me? Because we all love visitors. We all love phone calls.
Sure.
I like to chat to you. But who are they, and what are they doing on my phone?
Yeah, sure. So basically, who are they, and what is their purpose in the office?
Yeah.
So with that being said, depending upon the sales organization or the sales company, they may be, and now post-COVID, it's very possible that they're using more of the sales arm of an inside sales program. Mm-hmm. And those sometimes are used, the inside sales people are used to promote legacy products that may not be promoted by the outside sales representative, but still has a use within the office. A great example would be like Neulasta, which is heavily used to prevent any kind of febrile neutropenia, which can be life-threatening, but isn't necessarily something that's talked about by an outside sales representative. So you have representatives like that who are still promoting and trying to maintain market share for older products. Then you have the outside sales representative that actually are knocking on doors and calling on the physicians and within oncology, the chemo nurses, if the office or facility like a hospital or a large clinic, they may have their own pharmacy. So they're going to speak to pharmacists as far as dosing and administration.
Okay.
They'll speak to the nurses about side effect and therapeutic benefit. And they'll speak to obviously the doctors about therapy, therapeutic benefit, who are the right patients, who are the wrong patients. And then also you may have an outside representative talk to somebody, the office manager, regarding reimbursement, making sure that they're coding the medication correctly so that the office or the physician's getting paid. So J codes, whatnot. And then there's also, again, depending upon the company and what they're going to do. So we talked about inside sales, we talked about outside sales. Then there's a key account manager. If the office is part of a large franchise of medical offices, like in the state of Florida, you have Florida cancer specialists. That would be considered a key account because they influence many, many different satellite offices. So you would make sure that if there were contracts within a particular product, there's pull through with that, et cetera. Then also, if you're talking about a very large pharmaceutical company, they may have nurse educators who would go in and educate nurses about side effect management, drug adherence and compliance, making sure that the nurses are, because nurses, whether it's a chemo nurse or an oncology, an OCN, an oncology certified nurse, or sometimes nurses, the turnover can be high. So they're constantly educating the nurses about side effects and or about a treatment protocol or your drug is a part of. So there's constant education and other programs. And then also you might have a reimbursement specialist that would go into the office and make sure and educate the office manager to make sure that they're getting reimbursed from insurance. They're doing J codes correctly, answering questions. If something is denied, they may help the office to a certain extent on making sure that there's pull through. If let's say something is denied and it's being, let's say it's a brand new drug and it has brand new drugs, they have a interim J9999 code. And that takes a while for a permanent code to be assigned to that drug. So they may help with that, some kind of 30, 60, 90 type of thing, or if it's being challenged by the insurance company.
God, so that's a lot. I also hear medical science liaisons. That's a term that
yes, thank you. Yeah, I bet you almost slipped our conversation. So a medical science liaison would obviously work on the medical side. That's conversations that an outside sales rep can't talk about. So the outside sales representative is bound by what the prescribing information says that has been approved by the FDA.
Okay.
A medical science liaison may get into conversations that are medical and also talk about clinical trials that an office may participate in or a large practice may be part of. So a medical science liaison would cover like an entire state or states, and they would handle that. So they're part of the medical side and not sales. So that's why they're separate. And thanks for bringing that up. I almost passed my mind.
No worries. So if you want to ask someone about kind of the medical details, or any upcoming trials, you want to speak to the medical science liaison.
So the medical person knows things that the outside salesperson may know about but can't discuss, but sometimes they don't know to detail what an MSL does know. And so let's say a physician, you have a drug that's for breast cancer, but there's clinical data that has been presented at ASCO or ESMO, and those are all medical study groups that actually put together conventions and everything like that for medical information exchange. And the doctor says, hey, I've heard about your drug that's approved for breast cancer, but I heard that it has good clinical benefit in, let's say, lung or another tumor type. An outside sales representative cannot discuss that. The only response is that, doctor, I've also heard of that, but clinically I can't discuss that clinical outcome with you. Let me transfer you to our medical department. And that's where an MSL may come in, or somebody from the medical side will then approach or contact the physician either by email or by phone call and give them that information.
So, Richard, it sounds like if I want to have a deep science research conversation, the person I want to speak to is the medical science liaison.
Yes.
Does that sound right?
Exactly. Like I said, the salesperson can only discuss with a physician the prescribing information that was approved by the FDA for that drug and the disease state that it was, that the FDA approved it in. Anything outside or what's called off-label has to go through medical.
Okay.
And there's a reason for that. I mean, you don't want someone in sales to talk about something that isn't approved. That would be illegal, and that would be very bad. And the medical side is going to have all the ins and outs regarding the clinical trial, the patient types. Now, it's very possible that sometime in the future, that drug may get approved for that other disease state. But until that happens, that's all medical information.
Got it. Okay. So the sales reps are kind of bound within what's previously been approved.
That is a legal conversation that you cannot deviate from.
Okay.
If your drug was approved for, let's say, breast cancer, you can only speak about breast cancer and how it was used in the clinical trial.
Okay, that's good information for everyone to have. And so if I have a question about reimbursement or a question about billing or coding,
right,
then the reimbursement specialist is the person that I need to reach out to.
Well, I mean, the representative may have some information.
Okay.
And the information that the outside sales representative has maybe just be enough. What is the new J code? It's this. Okay, boom, done. But if it's something, sometimes the outside sales representative will work in conjunction with the reimbursement specialists.
Okay.
And if the reimbursement specialist, it's an added layer of value for the office. Obviously the outside sales representative is going to be in that office more so than maybe the reimbursement specialist, because the reimbursement specialist for the most part is probably going to have a larger territory or cover a larger area.
Okay.
Again, sometimes, the reimbursement specialist usually comes in when, someone's thrown a wrench into the wheels of getting things done, and it's maybe a little bit more difficult or more advanced than maybe the outside sales representative has knowledge of.
So they call in the reimbursement specialist for backup.
Right. So,
help me untangle this mess.
The reimbursement specialist has detailed and a depth of knowledge in regards to negotiating and navigating through the insurance reimbursement process.
Got it. Okay. And then the nursing education specialist, this is if I have a question about the actual treatment protocol.
So it would be treatment protocols. It would be in some offices, the oncology certified nurse will mix and administer the drug. So it's making sure that they understand how to mix if the drug needs to be reconstituted or prepared in any way prior to delivery to the patient. So there's that. There's also side effect management, what to look out for. making sure that the nurse is educated enough to discuss side effect management with the patient. So, there was a drug that I once sold a long time ago, and one of its major side effects was really bad diarrhea.
Oh no.
So for the patient, it was a drug for colorectal cancer, which, kind of makes sense that if you have a tumor in the colon, those cells that are obliterated by the chemotherapy have to go somewhere. And so diarrhea is, and there were a common kind of like an aha, yeah, it's going to go somewhere, and be eliminated by the body. But there were two types of diarrhea. There was a cholinergic, which was an effect that happened during administration of the medication, and then there was a secretory, which happened after the administration of the drug and after the patient went home. So there was how to manage that. And trust me, when you mention the word diarrhea, everybody's ears perk up. Nobody wants diarrhea. So it was educating nurses over and over and over again, because you could say something 5, 6, 10 times, and until somebody got it correct. They would forget something or leave something out. So it was a constant education. And then you also have to put into consideration the patient, whereas you may have spoken to the nurse 25 times, I'm making that number up, but the patient's hearing it for the first time. And, the patient, you have to, take in consideration the patient, maybe this is their first time ever getting chemotherapy. Chances are it probably is. They're scared. It's an unknown. It's regardless of what the side effect profile of a drug may be. They're scared. They're anxious. They maybe have a family member with them. And then also, depending upon the patient, they may not be all there. They may have all their wits.
Distracted.
Distracted about everything.
Stress.
Stress, exactly. So, and they may be older and may just not, the lights are on, but no one's home. But they need to have the therapy. So it's a constant education. It's making sure the patients are comfortable, and it's setting expectations. If a patient took aspirin and didn't know the side effects of aspirin, and then something happened, they'd be very alarmed.
Oh yes.
So it's kind of trying to put a patient at ease and saying, hey, listen, you're going to be taking a medication. This is what we're doing. This is why we're doing it. And this is what could happen. And if it does happen, this is how you deal with it and you manage it. And putting that patient's fears at ease as much as you can, but it's setting expectations as opposed to not telling the patient anything and having them go through this, this journey. And that's where you have these really bad stories of people saying, oh, so-and-so took chemotherapy and they got really sick, and that, if that ever happened to me, I would never do it. So it's really conditioning that patient to be a self-advocate and say, listen, you've got to take charge of your own, not only of your own health, but also how to deal with the side effects that you're going to have. So you have a good experience, and as much as one could have by getting chemotherapy, and also, not only drug compliance, but drug adherence. So you don't want someone to get chemotherapy once and say, I'll never do it again. You want to make sure that because the longer they stay on therapy and complete it, there are better chances of them of having a good outcome or a better outcome.
Exactly. Yeah. Okay. So if we want to talk about keeping patients on therapy, the nurse education specialist is who we want to speak to, and they can provide some tips.
It's going to be key to that, along with the outside sales representative.
Okay.
They may partner together and maybe do a lunch just for the nurses. and just make sure that there are and the oncology nurse educator will probably have slide decks and more information than an outside sales representative would have, to make sure that those nurses are in the loop and in the know.
Got it. So way long ago, before coronavirus times,
Yes.
we used to have these meetings in person,
Right.
and we used to eat Chipotle together and learn about the newest drugs. Now we can't do that as much. So can you tell me, how has the coronavirus affected the relationship that you see between, all these different people, inside, outside sales, the key account contacts like the nurse educator? How do you see this relationship change now that we can't do so much in-person interacting?
Sure. Yeah. No. Coronavirus has put a halt to a lot of different sales and a lot of different industries and a lot of different businesses and everything. And pharmaceutical sales as well has been affected by it. So, like you said, prior to COVID, outside reps were welcomed, and you'd knock on the door and you'd schedule something or lunch. You get to see the doctor and you'd speak to he or she and the nurses, et cetera. Now with things like Zoom and WebEx and other, depending upon what company you work for and what deal they've worked out with whatever video meeting supplier. Zoom has been, and programs like it have been definitely a way of maybe the future. You've had a number of doctors, and the doctors will literally dictate in the future how detailing and talking to them will be. I think you're going to have some doctors who love the interaction, the face-to-face. And now that people are being vaccinated and everything like that, I think you will have some doctors who will start to open up their offices again. And that's going to be wonderful, because that's clearly the best way to do it. Face-to-face interaction, having and building that relationship with a physician and knowing exactly how they treat their patients based on their tumor types that they have and how they present, because everybody presents differently. And some patients are great candidates for a medication that one might be selling, and some patients are not. And that's why there's so many different kinds of medicines out there. With that being said, you have physicians who have gotten used to not having reps in the office, and they probably enjoy it and like it. They probably get to see more patients and whatnot.
That's fair enough.
Yeah, I mean, and that's all good. And if that's what works for that doctor, fantastic. But there's still a need for drug reps. There's still a need for that interaction. And I don't know what that is going to look like in the future. I think it's way too early to tell, but I think inside sales programs will grow. And outside sales representatives are going to have to be very, very nimble on being able to utilize the technology that's out there, and whether it's a phone conversation, an email, a Zoom presentation, an outside sales representative is going to have to adapt to that technology and adapt to those different ways of, for lack of a better way of saying it, of selling and educating their physicians on their medication. So I think there's going to be a shift. I just don't know to what degree. But and the other thing is that if you're a sales representative who's a little bit older and set in their ways, I think they're going to struggle with it. I know people who are not much younger or older than I am, and hate computers. I'm afraid I don't know what to do. I don't know how to open up a PDF, and And I think those people, if they are in industry, they're going to have a real tough time adapting. The one thing that we know in the universe that is constant is change. And this is going to be another piece that is going to change, and people are going to have to change with it. So like me, you may want to clean up the background of your house and not see my refrigerator if I'm talking to a physician on Zoom. But yeah, I think the video conferencing, like a Zoom, and then having your clinical presentation, and then go and because that clearly people learn by visual as well as verbal.
Mm-hmm.
So if you can provide a visual content to your presentation, it's always going to be a benefit to you.
Got it. Okay, so you think that a lot of the changes that were necessitated by COVID are going to stay?
I think to a certain degree, yes. Again, I think it's early. I don't know to what degree, but yes, I think you will find that physicians will do more learning online.
Mm-hmm.
Physicians had that with CMEs and other type of medical education in the past few years. But I think the role of an outside sales representative will definitely be embracing online learning, as well as the pharmaceutical industry will be presenting more content to physicians online.
Okay. So existing sales reps are going to need to maybe listen to their physicians and where they're more comfortable.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, what I would always do when I would go and meet with a physician the first time would be, doctor, tell me how you like to have a pharmaceutical representative detail you, and then that's how I would go and do it. A rep should never go in with their own agenda. It's always the doctor, it's always the staff, and you need to adjust your sales presentation to them and how they want to learn and how they accept information, as opposed to just going in with your own agenda. You'll never be successful long term. So, doctor, tell me how you like to have a sales representative discuss medication and the science or clinical trials with you. Tell me. And that's how I'm going to present to you going forward. And if the physician wants more of a, hey, listen, I like, after I've seen all my patients at 5:30, 6 o'clock, well, send me a link and, I'll give you 15 minutes. Perfect.
Okay.
Fine. Some physicians will say, you know what, I like the day break, and at lunch, give me a sandwich and I'll talk to you, and we'll do it that way. Some physicians send me an email. And, as a representative, as you're building a relationship with that physician, you'll start to say, hey, listen, you know what, I'm going to be by next week. I'd love to stop by on Tuesday. Is that a good time for me just to take 5 minutes? Yeah, sure. And you'll be able to blend in face to face, and maybe, but I think that the video presentation will be part of something. To what degree, I don't know, as far as, what percentage of detailing will be. But, video presentations, you got to go with the flow. As technology gets more advanced, people will adapt to it.
Got it. And as a sales staff, I think have a right to expect that the sales process fits in within your day of seeing patients.
Yeah, and again, it's setting expectation with the physician. Hey, look, if this is how you like to be, how you like to discuss clinical information, that's how I'm going to discuss clinical information with you. Mm-hmm. If somebody is more, some doctors don't like the slick, what you call Madison Avenue sales presentation booklets that have all the really neat charts and everything like that, and the bullet points. Some doctors just want you to take out a clinical trial and talk to them about it. Mm-hmm. Hey, doctor, let's go. Let me talk to you about the methods of the trial, who were the demographics in the trial, who were there, what the clinical outcome was. This was the side effect profile, and it's all right there in science. It's facts. Mm-hmm. Some doctors don't like the Madison Avenue because they feel you're only cherry picking out certain information. So if you discuss the trial with them from the clinical preprint, Some doctors love that.
That it's all about what works best for.
Absolutely. It always comes down to what is best for the patient and discussing what patient group, doctor, you see breast cancer patients. Let's talk about those type of patients that I want to talk to you about that were in this clinical trials. They were, let's say, ER positive, PR negative. They had lymph nodes that were 3 centimeters larger or more, and patient types were between 37 and 45. I'm making up all of these demographic things, but doctor, you do have patients who present with breast cancer like that, and they may say yes or they may say no. If they say yes, you'd say, okay, that's great. Are you using my product in that patient population? If they say no, how come? Why? And then get into that conversation, that clinical conversation. Doctor, let me show you this clinical reprint. You may be aware of it, and let's talk about what the clinical benefit was for those patients. And then you get into a conversation. And then, doctor, after our conversation, will you now use my product in those patients? Yeah. If they say no, then you got to go back and kind of understand why. If they say yes, then, you get a commitment. Okay, I want to come back in a couple of weeks. Do you have a patient in mind? Yes. Okay, I want to come back a couple of weeks and talk about how that patient's doing. If no, well, I'm going to come back and I'm going to talk to your nurses and I want to make sure that, if they do have a patient, doctor, is it okay if I talk to your nurses to make sure that when you put them on my product, they're educated to know how to use it and discuss side effect management with the patient? Yeah, oh, sure, go ahead, talk to my nurses. Great. Okay. And then maybe on the way out, I'll try to talk to the office manager about reimbursement.
Okay. Oh, I see.
And that's what's known in the industry as a total office call. You talk to the doctor, you gain commitment from the physician, then you educate the nurses, and then you talk to the office manager. And anybody else, sometimes there are social workers and it may be hospitals that may talk to patients about the anxiety of product or about the benefit of therapy and whatnot. And you talk to anybody and everybody that touches that patient.
Got it. So that the patient has along the way all the tools that they need to get the best
all the tools
outcome.
And all the support from the clinical side. I mean, they, obviously it's always best for a patient to have support at home and, and have people around them that, are going to, make sure that they're doing what they need to do to take care of themselves while they're on therapy and everything like that. So there needs to be a support system. And again, it comes down to setting expectations.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So we want to make sure that the patients start therapy and stay on therapy and have all the support that they need to be successful in that way.
Yes.
So we already talked about kind of setting expectations for side effects. Can you tell us a little bit, what are some kind of roadblocks that you see sometimes in your work for patients starting and staying on therapy?
Sure.
Can you, how can we empower our patients in your eyes to advocate for themselves?
So it's really important for the outside sales representative and sometimes the inside remote representative to educate the nurse or whoever is going to administer the medication to the patient. And a lot of the newer therapies that are coming out are pills, chemotherapy in the form of an oral medication. So that is where also the specialty representative comes into play. If the medication is a pill or an oral therapy. And if it's an infusion drug, where a patient is going to go to a clinic and then sit down in a chair and get infused. So it's extremely important that those representatives educate the nurses consistently over time about the side effects.
Okay, so this is a different group of people. So the infusion and also specialty.
Yeah. So so the specialty, I'll address them separately. So the infusion nurse is going to give a patient, and you got to remember, it's not just one drug. Usually, it's a combination of drugs. So, and each drug in that combination is going to have a potential side effect. So it's making sure, and and there are different drugs. So you may have one patient in chair A that is getting a certain protocol, and in chair B is for a different tumor type or a different tumor, and in chair C, again, a different tumor and different problems and different drugs. So that nurse has to know a lot of information and is juggling a lot of side effect management information that they have to verbally tell the patient. And those patients may have a language barrier. They, you may have patients like, down in South Florida that may be primarily Spanish. So that nurse has to be bilingual to be able to talk and educate those patients. And there may be cultural barriers. There may be a lot of different things. Bottom line is that information has to be given, and the patient has to understand what it means for them getting that protocol or combination of drugs, and what therapies or side effects they're going to potentially experience. We've all heard stories of so-and-so knew somebody or had a family member that had breast cancer and they lost all their hair. Well, if you didn't know that you were going to lose all your hair, and you woke up one day and most of your hair was still on the pillow, it'd be very shocking and scary, and you'd have a lot of anxiety, and it's a physical manifestation of your disease, and you'd be scared, and you probably wouldn't want to do it again.
Absolutely.
So it's, that's why it's so important for the nurse prior to therapy to say, this is what could happen. Chances of you losing your hair is very high. Expect to lose it. If you don't, you're lucky, but expect to lose all your hair. Expect to be nauseous. And if you're nauseous, we have medicine to make sure that you're okay. And so we're going to write you a prescription so you can, before you go home, get it filled. We'll call it in for you, so it'll be at the CVS or the Walgreens on your way home.
So what you're, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, what you're encouraging is a frank, culturally relevant explanation of what the side effects are.
Absolutely.
Every time.
For every patient. Every time. And sometimes the patient will go, look, I know. You don't need to tell me again. But sometimes there's a caregiver there that never heard it before. So go it over with the caregiver. Hey, listen, I've already talked to your father, your mother, your brother, your sister, your husband, your wife about this, but I want to tell you, this is what you should look out for.
XYZ.
Some patients have grown up, you don't bother the doctor unless, you're going to die. And some, like I was mentioning before, there's a very high chance when you get chemotherapy with a portion of products that are out there to get neutropenia, which is a dropping or having your white blood cells drop to a very, very low. And your white blood cells are there to fight off bacterial infections and keep you healthy. So if you get neutropenia, you're going to get fever, and that's called febrile neutropenia. And if you have a fever post therapy, that's a bad thing, and it's life-threatening. And if you have a fever, and the chills, maybe I have the flu, or maybe I'm getting sick, or I have a cold. It isn't anything related to the chemotherapy, so I'm not going to call the doctor. That's a mistake, and they need to know that, because God forbid you get febrile neutropenia, which is life-threatening, and then the patient starts to crash, and then all of a sudden they're going to the hospital. It could be too late, and that might delay another round of chemotherapy, which could be problematic. So it's always, you always have to make sure that the patient understands. Sometimes you may want to have the patient repeat it back to you. Okay, what did I just say? I just want to make sure that you understand the severity regarding, if you lose your hair, it's not the end of the world, it's going to grow back. If you are nauseous or nauseated, we have medication that can help you not feel that way. You don't have to be suffering. There are things there. If you have diarrhea, there's a protocol regarding some over-the-counter anti-diarrheal medication that can help you, so that you don't get, because if you have really bad diarrhea, and this isn't kind of diarrhea that you went to a restaurant and the cook didn't wash his hands. This is really bad diarrhea. It's a lot worse than that.
Debilitating.
So you can get, if someone's older and they don't have the best eating habits and they don't drink maybe Gatorade or this or that, they're going to get dehydrated really fast. And if you get dehydrated, there's a whole list of things that can happen that can, be detrimental to that patient's health. So it's just constant communication, it's constant expectation setting, and it's a constant education process.
Exactly. So we talked about side effects. Another barrier to patients accessing information, or accessing drugs rather, is money. It's a major concern.
Right.
How am I going to pay for these drugs?
Sure. So what tools and resources are available to patients? And that's a great question. And I hear this by some people in my own family. Well, so and so wanted to get this, but it was so expensive, and so they didn't get it. Or they're spending so much amount of money. Well, if you have private insurance, I would say pretty much any and every pharmaceutical company has a private insurance program for the patient to get which would pay the gap or the co-payment part of that. So a lot of companies will issue the patient a credit card, which will cover that out of pocket.
Okay.
And then if you don't have private insurance, and let's say you're on Medicare or Medicaid, then there are foundations for your disease, through the American Cancer Society. There's a Pancreatic Society. There's so many different foundations that you can apply to, and when you apply, the criteria is very liberal. I knew one of that even if you made $250,000 or more, you still were eligible to get money from the foundation to pay that co-payment. So when I was a sales manager, there was I believe a physician who had cancer, and the physician got money. So it's a very liberal. The programs are usually very, very liberal. I've never heard anybody be denied, but I'm sure it happens. I mean, I'm not the end all be all of information on these things. But there are a ton of information and a ton of things, and all the patient really has to do is ask their nurse or their doctor.
Okay.
It isn't something that is usually something that they freely discuss or will bring up, because if you have private insurance, you have private insurance, and everybody just thinks that, oh, okay, it's going to get covered.
Okay. Well,
Well, sometimes it doesn't, or sometimes it's going to, depending upon the insurance that the patient has. Some insurance doesn't cover what's called catastrophic injuries. Some insurance doesn't cover cancer. It all depends on what their employer has chosen for their employees.
okay. So as office staff, would you encourage us to be proactive is the word, sorry.
Yeah,
So you encourage to be proactive and say, hey, if you have problems paying for this medication, there are resources available to you.
Yes, and I think as the office manager should be asking those probing questions regarding insurance, and they will know what their insurance will or will not cover based on the insurance information that they've given them when they've signed in. So if and when they need to have any kind of chemotherapy, that conversation should be a detailed conversation and asked a lot of probing questions. And sometimes it's a very easy fix. Here, fill out this form. And like I said, if you have private insurance, sometimes the drug company will issue you a credit card that is only good for that office or that medical therapy. And it's a Visa card, and it's by the company, and the company is basically funding it through a foundation that they set up. And so the company's, gives them money constantly, but the company's out of it because the foundation manages it.
Got it. Okay.
So the company can't say, well, we as a company, we denied you. It's not us, it's the foundation, and they're the ones that either are accepting it or denying it. But the company is constantly funding it because the companies are aware if there are, outside of oncology, there's a medication therapy for hepatitis C that's a cure. Well, it's a very, very expensive cure. And a lot of times you'll hear now on commercials, if you can't afford this medication, the company has programs to help you do that, so that the patients are getting educated. So that would be the office manager. It could be also the nurse that would say, listen, you want to talk to the office manager about this. And it might be about a foundation. It might be about a reimbursement program that the company is offering. So there are programs out there for patients, absolutely.
Got it.
And patients should not be shy about asking.
Okay. So on both sides, so patients should be proactive, and office staff should be bringing up these conversations with patients. And it sounds like the process for applying it's pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
The requirements are pretty liberal, and to actually use the benefit sounds like it's pretty easy.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, every year, I'm sure we all have gone like for a physical or everything in the beginning of the year. And one of the first things out of their mouth when you check in is, has your insurance changed? Mm-hmm. And yes or no. And if it has, let's do you have your insurance card? Yeah, here you go. And the other thing is that if you're a patient and you are participating in a financial reimbursement program, at the end of every year, the beginning of every new year, you're going to need, if you're still getting therapy, you're going to need to update your information and basically reapply. And go from there. And once you the process is extremely simple. It's not hard. If you have your own computer, an office might say, when you get home, just here's the web link, fill it out, and you're done. Or sometimes they'll say, listen, let's do it right now. Well, I'll do it for you, and they'll boom, and it's finished.
Awesome.
So, yeah.
So easy. Richard, you have given us so much great information. This has been a great conversation. I thank you so much for joining us.
Alicia, thank you so much for asking me. And it was, I'm very grateful to have been asked. And thanks again for the opportunity.
You are so welcome. For any of our listeners who want to reach out to you with any follow-up questions, what's the best way for them to do that?
The best way to reach out to me is I'm on LinkedIn. Richard Stein, and that would be the best place to reach me is on LinkedIn. You see my face. I got this picture, and would be more than happy to help out anybody as much as I can within my ability.
Awesome. So I will leave a link or add a link to your LinkedIn in the show notes.
Perfect.
Okay. Richard, again, thank you so much for sharing your insights with us today. We really appreciate you being a guest on the show.
Thank you so much, Alicia. And I look forward to, if you ever need anything or any other help, you want to ask me to join again, I'm more than happy to do so.
You've been listening to Working in Oncology. To ensure that you never miss an episode, subscribe to the show in your favorite podcast player. If you're listening in Apple Podcasts, we'd love for you to leave a quick rating of the show. Just tap the number of stars you think the podcast deserves. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time.